It's just time to put holes where they should go in the handle scales. So, nothing can go wrong, if that's not the scariest thing. Welcome back. So, my last video I said I was injured and I couldn't really stand up. And by the time I made another video, I could stand up. And birthday was coming up. I decided to make a knife for a friend's birthday, realizing that it has been 6 months since I have done anything in the garage involving a grinder. I decided to do what, as it turns out, is not super easy when you just get your feet back under you, which is make a straight edge knife. And remember that you only have a hacksaw to cut things out. So we rough in the shape of the knife using a pointy object. I am not kidding. I forgot the name of what that is. It's not a stylus. It is a stabby tool. But I did not forget how to hacksaw. To save you some time and effort, I have trimmed this down to a certain extent that you didn't see the hour and a half. I'm going to call it a struggle, but let's be honest. An hour and a half of remembering how your body works after not standing up for a month. But when in doubt, one thing that you can do if you need to make a longer cut is either have a table that has a split in it that you can saw at a shallower angle, or you can tilt the piece like I just did and is no longer on the screen, sideways and cut it horizontally. All that does is hurt your rotator cuff and cause you pain. But it'll do in a pinch. The smarter thing to do is either have a power tool, have a smaller knife, or a knife shape that is more conducive to being cut out with a hacksaw. All that being said, I shortened the piece, got the stuff that was in my way out of my way. I continued to saw, and saw, and saw, and saw. And I would like to think that in real time this is impressive. It's not. It's just so loud. Wearing hearing protection when you're doing this will stop you from losing your hearing even sooner than you would had you not. But I digress. Rambling done. One rectangle has been cut out. And I forgot to do something that I always do, which is cut out as many pieces of the knife with the bandsaw as possible, because I do have limited kitten minutes on my foot, and I decided these triangles would be too small to do anything with, which is false. I can always find something to do something with. But I'm just roughing out the profile of the knife on the grinder. One thing is, this knife has a, or the thickness of this knife kind of is an issue, because it is, I think, an eighth of an inch thick. It makes it easier to do everything, but it's not perfectly flat in some cases. And one of the things that I ran into was it's coming up, but I'm thinking this is going fine, but there are other things that I should have done, like flatten the knife out while it's still soft. I know I'm skipping ahead about 4 minutes in, but to be honest, and I'm not mad, most people do skip every 30 seconds or for as long as I'm talking. I adjust. But at the same time, this grind right here, to use the corner of the grinder, forgot the word, that is the most aggressive grinding that you can do, and it gets the job very done. But something that I learned from other knife makers is use the radius of the tools that you were working on, especially grinders, to get you something that you can do again. That arc inside of that little finger curve is very repeatable because it uses that part of the grinder. And very much so, same with that. And for the straights, just do the best you can. Just like that. That was the fastest. That was faster than sawing out the rectangle for the knife. So, before heat treat, drilling holes for the pins. So far, for having not done this in 6 months, not doing too bad. My confidence levels are around medium. Around medium. The drilling goes fine. Absolutely nothing to write home about that I can think of. Oh no, that's later. Okay, so tragedy later. We'll worry about that then. Chamfering the holes so that there's a little pool for epoxy to sit in, and to make sure there aren't little sharp edges that will absolutely demolish my hands later. Just using a bigger drill bit was faster and gave me a shallower sort of chamfer that I wanted, as opposed to the like countersinking bit. Countersink is the word. I have forgotten the words for many things. So, here's a live video editing. The oil in the can hasn't been heated up yet. This is sped up. That is a matte gas torch. Those aren't real fire bricks, and that's not a real knife. That's a CG knife that I put in beforehand so that you can't see me messing up the heat treat the first time. Easy peasy. You would never know. But no, I messed up the heat treat the first time. If you're working with 1095 steel likes to be heat treated at, that hard. That is a very hard knife. When you are heat treating 1095, heat up your oil to around 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough that you can't really touch the side of the can, and then dunk it. But after temper, I had these little surface cracks that showed up that I was super displeased with. In my mild wisdom, I decided I'm going to finish the knife off and see if those grind out. Spoiler alert, because this video is coming out, most of that crack did grind out, and because this is a very light-duty cutty knife, that is not going to matter in the slightest. So, to spare you from my inexperienced and, let's be honest, rusty grinding practices, flattening the knife, beveling the knife, polishing the bevel that I made, using aggressive belts, less aggressive belts, and at the bottom, a Trizact belt or a structured abrasive. It breaks off, it stays sharp, and it does a really good job of me not touching it for minutes at a time while you leave the machine running. So yeah, not a lot to say. Oh, but I am using a bevel guide, which helps immensely. It's a very expensive, very pro sort of tool for what it is. It is very, very nice. I think if I could get better at freehanding knives, I would use that maybe at closer to the end to make sure that I get things nice and pretty, but honestly, it worked out really nicely. So here we are after grinding and some hand sanding, and I etched it in ferric chloride just to get it that sort of like dark shade, but it also told me that my heat treat was relatively successful. Because ferric chloride does not like to etch black if you have not heat treated well. So I was very pleased by multiple different things telling me that I did a good job. Cutting out the knife scales. This is a fancy wood, and I knew what the name was before I started this video. I think the label of it I also took off because I told myself I wouldn't forget. Huh. Well, all that being said, bandsaw makes quick work of making rectangles, even slightly diagonal rectangles. I have put blue tape on them, super glued the blue tape to the blue tape so that I can make symmetrical handle scales. And because of the way that I'm doing it, you have to finish the tops of the handle scales before you do anything else, because you can't really get into hand sand or do any nice detail work. Once they're on, that area is wildly inaccessible. So, you see the technique. Make something that was not round. Use a grinder to make everything faster, but honestly, hand tools can do things more precisely, sooner. Well, more precisely, more precisely slower, but if you get good at power tools, they can be just as precise, but fast. At least for the rough work, and the finish work. People who are good at using grinders impress the ever-loving hell out of me. So, here is the blue tape to blue tape in action, using very expensive super glue, as it turns out. Super glue, one thing, don't super glue blue tape to something else. It does not come off. I learned that the hard way twice, and I thought, this time it'll be better. What am I missing? As it turns out, it's another piece of blue tape. So, I have that where I want. I like where the handle scale is sitting, and it's just time to put holes where they should go in the handle scales. So, nothing can go wrong, if that's not the scariest thing. The blade of the knife was pointing away from the direction that it was spinning, which is the only reason I put my hand down. But even that was dumb, so I apologize for anything scary. If you're new to my channel, just know that I don't put videos of me injuring myself on the internet. That is not my thing. So anyway, I did the blue tape trick again, but with the other set of handle scales, or the other handle scale. And I got lucky with how well it lined up. I was trying to be very careful, and it paid off. Sometimes when I'm very careful, it doesn't pay off. Like wearing shorts in a garage where there are shards of metal absolutely everywhere. Or when you're using 30-minute epoxy that you don't find on yourself until 30 minutes later. When you're like, does that smell like epoxy? Oh, that's me. Anyway, so glue things together. I've already cut the pins. The pins in this case are bronze. I couldn't tell you the gauge. I couldn't tell you the gauge when I bought it, and I bought it off of a jewelry website that told me a very specific gauge. They are slightly undersized for the holes, which makes it easy to put them in, but it also makes it easier for them to fall out. I learned that in practice multiple times. There's one. If you can get your diameter hole to a little bit closer to your diameter pin, it's just better in general, and you should do that. This is also a gift, so I am doing all of this in about a day. I think this is the first time I've made a knife in a day. No, there were 2 days. So this is the next day. 30 minutes. I like that 30 minutes to go overnight, because even over the course of 24 hours, it's still getting a little bit stronger. And after 24 hours, that's right around where I'm comfortable with it. If you're noticing what I notice immediately, I didn't protect the knife blade in the slightest, because I make poor decisions. cutting off the pins because I don't like grinding off that much bronze. I don't like generating that much heat with epoxy. It's just a bad idea. Don't do it if you don't have to. This generates heat too, sure, but a 2x72-inch belt grinder spinning at, say, 300 RPM with an aggressive belt is going to get warm. So doing this now, there's plenty of room to work with to grind away all the crap that I just did there. But this is the same deal. Making shapes out of shapes. Making shapes out of shapes. I am sanding with aggressive belts, then less aggressive belts, and I finished off this handle almost 100% on the grinder, minus some hand sanding that, outside of a little bit, I spared you from this time. Hand sanding, not super exciting. Do you do a lot of it? Oh my god, yeah. Did I cut out all of the blade hand sanding? You bet your ass I did. And I'll do it again. I don't know why that was a threat, man. You should chill out a bit. I don't think I will. Anyway. So, just that last little bit of hand sanding at 400 grit. Nothing too extreme because you don't want a knife handle that's too slippery. But I do end up liking the hand feel. Feels good. The cracks that were in it did kind of grind away, and most of them are under the handle. And when I say kind of, what I mean is I couldn't see them. They weren't exposed when I did the acid etching, so I was like, this is best case scenario for this knife, that it is this thin, because it'll never be used for chopping. It'll never be used for anything but like cutting or whatever my friend wants to do with it. So I clean the ever-loving hell out of the blade with acetone. I take off that little spot of epoxy that I saw earlier. That was surprisingly stressful. And it did leave a mark that I am not proud of that remained on the knife. But all things being what they are, if you are one of my friends and it comes around to be gift time, there's a non-zero chance that you might get another knife. There's also a non-zero chance that you're going to get a Gundam, but that is a different story entirely. Because I want to share the fact that Gundams are an addiction, and I have it. This isn't a knife video anymore. This is about Gundams. I kid. So, a little bit of hand sanding on the back. I just wanted to even out what was there. I decided not to dip this back into acid either, because I don't know what that would do to the wood. And I decided that having shiny edges on the outsides was not the worst thing in the world. If anything, I kind of like the contrast, and I was pretty happy with it. I also didn't finish washing it off until now. So, this is what we're left with. It's a little mottled. That's because my hand sanding game is trash right now. It's not shaving sharp yet. If there's one thing a little more boring than watching how bad my sharpening technique is, it's watching the entire knife sharpening technique that I have. So, diamond stones, stropping, just going through grits and trying to get it as good as I can get it. We start taking off hair. I start feeling better about it. The knife was tempered at 400 degrees, so it's still like screaming hard, but it's just a little bit tougher. It could stand to be a little sharper, but here is what I feel is worth the price of entry, seeing the things that I missed while hand sanding. You gotta oil your wood. I don't care what you're doing. You're going to put oil on it, and you're going to have a good time. Then you're going to post it on the internet and realize this is your job now. That's actually not true. I don't make a single dollar from this, and I don't know that I ever will. But if I do, cool. If I don't, I still got that shot. This is just butcher block oil too. It's my personal favorite. It has not yellowed. And then I also realized that acid opens up the pores of metal. So all of that oil going in and darkening the blade felt really, really good. And I was very happy that that happened. But all that being said, with the oiling, typically the knife is done. There's nothing else to do. It just needs to sit around, cure, and stay as far away from me as possible because I'm going to want to cut things. I did have a little chip out on that piece. It looks like there might be a smidge of unevenness in the handle scales width-wise. But overall, for having not done this in 6 months, I'm not displeased. And my friend was not either. I was very happy to give it to him on his birthday during a D&D session. And I feel like there's enough time to say, yeah, there's about 2 minutes of story time. When you want to give your friend a knife and you're playing D&D and you think, how the ever-loving hell can I give him this knife? You look at their character. You look at their character descriptions. You're like, what the hell can I do? Well, he is a necromancer, and there's a decent chance he will be watching this at some point. I had to give him a knife, and he picked up a cursed book. Maybe the knife is an offering from the book. And maybe the knife is hidden on the battle map that you've never made a battle map of anything ever before. You make one, you make some crude buildings out of foam and paint, and then you hide the knife on the field, and you just wait. You wait for him to get hit, and you're like, I can do this. And in real life, I hand him, in real life, I tell his character that he needs to talk to a demon, and then, or he needs to talk to a book. Then he's like, not now. So I have to force the issue. Time stops. He addresses the character, says, hey, pick up that box. And I point to a box that has been on the battle map for maybe 2.5 hours. We've been eating, we've been talking, we've been playing, we've been in combat for a good long while. He just, like, he's thinking in character, look around. The demon then addresses the player directly. I look him dead ass in the eyes and I'm like, pick up the box. And then he picks it up. That knife comes out. He gets a knife that has its own properties. So that was one of the, I'll be honest, that was as close as you can get to being improvised 100%, except for the item that his character got and the real item that he got in person. And the longer that I talk over this, the more you can sort of ignore how sharp it is in some places and how sharp it isn't in others. But I was very happy with it, and I'm very happy that it has a home. Anyway, thank you for watching, and this will be the first time that I have gone into the void past where the video stops. This is strange. I don't think anybody should be here. You should all go home. Have a good evening. Or day. Or night. Or afternoon. Anyway. Bye.